What's going on, everybody, and welcome to, I believe, episode 20 of the Wheel of Time Diaries. We're almost done with The Shadow Rising. After this week, I'll be done, so next diary will be the last one on this book, and then I'll be off for a couple months before I get to Fires of Heaven. And sorry that this hat is actually really not great quality, but it is what it is. We're just going to go with it. This week, I did spend a little bit longer reading than I thought I would. I spent just under 7 hours, was it? Yes, I'd spent just under 7 hours reading this week, and overall enjoyed my time more this week than I think I did a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure about last week, though. Last week was pretty hype in terms of all the stuff that actually happened and what I read. This week it did have quite a few things going on, though, except for a couple chapters that I don't actually recall as well as I think I should, or that seemed a little bit slower than they maybe should have been, so it was maybe a little bit more of a mixed week, all things considered, but I did get through chapter 53. I believe the goal was to get through chapter 52 if I could, and that would be where I'd end up. But I got an extra chapter read this morning because I didn't have to go to work as early this morning. I had a couple hours, so I got an extra chapter read where I otherwise would not have been able to. So maybe I'll be able to finish this on like Thursday morning on a day off. Maybe Friday morning if it takes too long. I don't know. There's still 60 pages left, and 60 pages with this book is a lot. Overall, I did enjoy my reading, like I said, but it was a bit more mixed. So let's actually just jump into the spoilers and talk about what I actually read. Now, last week we left off with Perrin's plotline, a little bit of a longer section in the Two Rivers, but it did end off right as the White Cloaks joined in the Two Rivers. And actually, the little bit of reading that I did this week that featured the Two Rivers didn't actually make very much point of that. Like, there's a couple like little mentions there, but it didn't actually end up being that important. There's still one more Perrin chapter left, so maybe it'll be a little bit more important the next chapter, or maybe it'll be for the future of Perrin's plotline. I'm not entirely sure, but that was where I left off last week. So this week we started off with chapter 46, which was another Elaine POV chapter. Again, it was only one chapter. This week I discovered sort of essentially the reason why the Tanchico plotline hasn't been super on screen up to this point, and a lot of that is related to it. Related to timing, essentially. There's a couple things that, well, Perrin's timeline is, or Perrin's plotline rather, is just really long in this book. It seems like it's a decent bit longer than all of the other individual plot lines are, so it has to move through a lot of that when it can. That's what Jordan's been doing there. But Rand's plotline especially is where this has been involved, where there's been, well, Rand and Egwene's and Matt's, the Aiel timeline, or plotline. I keep on saying timeline when I mean to say plotline. The Aiel plotline, so to speak, has needed a couple things to happen before the Tanchico plotline could really progress, so that's why it's been a little bit more spaced out. So I understand what's going on there. I do wish we got a little bit more of it more often, but I did get that this week, actually, because now things are starting to come to a head. Starting off in chapter 46, Elaine and Nynaeve came to meet the Shan-Chan chick who we sort of met, I believe, in my reading last week, who's looking for them in Tanchico. There were some interesting develops here. There were some interesting developments here, especially since in their meeting, the Shan-Chan woman, is her name Egyanan? I have absolutely no idea if that's how her name is pronounced. In fact, I'm fairly certain it's not how it's pronounced. This is going to be one of the times that I actually remember to go in the glossary to double check, because holy cow, it's quite the name, that is for sure. Egyanan, or Egyanan. That's quite the name. Either way, the Shan-Chan woman and Nynaeve and Elaine meet, and the Shan-Chan is not being open about the fact she's Shan-Chan, which, that's fairly obvious. I don't see any reason why she would do that, but the girls don't really suspect, so there's a lot of, sort of a releasing of information with Shan-Chan in this, and then in the next Elaine chapter that happens as well. Well, the next Tanchico chapter that happens. That involves a lot of revealing of information to her before the girls realize she's from, the Shan-Chan people, and it's like, okay, this is actually kind of a problem because they like to enslave Aes Sedai. But, that's what's going on. The real kicker of what happened in chapter 46, though, was related to the fact that a random person who is revealed later to have been one of the Forsaken comes into the inn I believe, the inn where the girls are staying at the moment, and coerces information out of them through, some usage of the power or whatever it is that they're able to do, essentially urging them to be the first to splurt out all of the information that they have. They aren't able to hold back very much, but then they're forced to forget that they revealed anything. So this encounter happens, and the girls don't actually remember that the encounter happens. But it seems later on, the next time we have a POV chapter with these guys, I suppose I'll just skip to that since I'm referring to it so much. I believe it's chapter 51. Yes, rather fun and interesting scene in chapter 51, Revelations in Tanchico. The Black Aja are revealed to be in the Penarch's palace there. Baal Domon reveals that Egeanin is the Shan Chan to them. And actually, it was the chapter after that, chapter 52, Need. That one was the one where the woman who wheedled out the information from the girls was apparently a Forsaken. And that this was all discovered in Teleronriad. Was it Egwene that, or sorry, was it Nynaeve that went to Teleronriad this time? I forget for sure. I just know that it was revealed in Teleronriad, where the girls discover that, she's the Forsaken, that wheedled out information from them, so they don't actually know how much of the information they gave to her, but that she had basically free access to everything that they knew, and that this woman seems to have some sort of a Dom type item that, the Shan Chan use against women, against Aes Sedai, who can, women who can channel. This Forsaken has one that seems like it might be intended for Rand, so one that can work for men. I don't know if this is like a certainty if that's exactly what's going on, but this seems like the thing that Egwene or the thing that the girls are meant to be obtaining before the Black Aja can. So the question that I had regarding this is, or the interesting thing that I was interpreting from this is, maybe Egeanin has something to do with it. I don't know if she specifically has anything to do with the Forsaken. I don't think she has anything specifically to do with this item, but there's a little bit of coincidental timing involved here for sure. Next up, let's move on to chapter 47, which I thought was a really solid chapter, one of my favorites in the book. This one was taking place at the White Tower in Tarvalon, more broadly speaking. That's where this chapter takes place. So more Min POV and more more Min POV and more Amerlin POV. And I actually don't know how to pronounce her name either, because it's going to become important to pronounce her name because she gets ousted from the Amerlin position in this chapter. That was quite the event that I did not see coming. I will just say that straight up. Chapter 47 was very unexpected, with very unexpected events in it. It seems like the previous Amerlin's name is Sanche, so I'm just going to say Sanche because that's easier to say. She gets ousted from Amerlin by Elida, who is one of the Red Sisters and has kind of been, apparently opposed to this Amerlin for a long time. So Sanche gets ousted, and so all hell breaks loose at the White Tower is the general gist of what happens in this chapter. But there was a lot of great stuff here. We got to see some downturn, some changes in Gawain's character. We got to see the aftermath of the battles at the tower a little bit, from seemingly both Sanche's and from Min's POV. We got to see Min break Sanche and what was her name? I know I wrote it down here somewhere. Leanne, her previous secretary, sort of, when she was Amerlin. Sanche and Leanne get broken out of their sort of prison situation by Min. They're able to escape the White Tower, where they also encounter the previous false dragon, the stilled, is that what it's called when they, forcefully still a male? I forget if there's a different term for stilling a man versus a woman. Forgive me if there is a different term, but they come up against Logain, who's kind of been in the series very tangentially, sort of on the very edges of it since the first book. And earlier in this book, Min had a viewing of him, having some sort of glory moment in his future. So Logain is now sort of part of the main parties, so to speak, even though these characters are by no means at this point in the story main characters. I feel like they're going to be, but then there's the fact that they just straight up recruit Logain. So Sanche allows for Logain to be part of the group, even though he was once a false dragon, and all of the baggage that comes with that, essentially. I really enjoyed chapter 47. It was great. The next couple chapters, I will say, 48 through 49, were rather uneventful. I'm not going to say I wasn't super into them. There just wasn't really that much that happened. They were just kind of more journeying that's happening with this IO plot line that, it is what it is. And then there's more stuff about whatever the clan's name is. Is it the Sido clan? Has apparently left the group because they weren't really accepted into the grouping where they're at before. So whoever their leader, so to speak, and I say that with heavy air quotes because it seems like all the other IEL use that with heavy air quotes in this book, are kind of taking them to Al-Kardar, Al-Kardal, I guess that's how it's called, Al-Kardal, where all of the IEL have been called to meet for Rand to proclaim himself as he who comes with the dawn for all of them. But this other clan is deciding to go early, probably to speak against Rand, because they don't really like Rand, and that is a problem. But this, basically what was happening in these two chapters were a little bit of that. The real eventful thing that happened in this plot line in my reading from last week was chapter 50, entitled Traps, where Rand dreams some stuff and wakes to find some Draghkar, which we haven't actually seen in the books, I don't think, since the first one. So since I have the world, which I'm rather surprised by that fact, very nearly kills him and Aviendha. And in response to this attack and the fact that, the Sido clan has gone on ahead to Al-Kardal so that they could probably, speak against Rand, all of the Aiel are going there now. So even though they might arrive earlier than some of the other septs, I believe, as they're called, Rand needs to basically proclaim himself as he who comes with the dawn as early as possible so that as few Aiel as possible are in their minds turned against him. So that's basically the head that this plot line seems to be coming to. So that's all well and exciting. I'm rather worried about how this is going to turn out a little bit later in the last couple chapters of the book, because it seems like those are going to be the next Rand chapters, or like the last couple chapters. So either it's going to be a very great thing, or it's going to be a very disastrous thing whenever this happens. And it also seems like it's coming to a sort of a very similar, but also very, contrastly different climax as The Dragon Reborn in some ways. And if it ends up going the way that I think it's going, I'm probably not going to be super into this climax for Rand's plotline, as it's just, kind of a repeat of exactly what happens in the last book. But I could always be surprised. It could always be very different than I'm expecting, as this has happened several times in the books where I've predicted what might happen next and been very wrong about it. Next up is the last chapter that I read, which I just read this morning, chapter 53, another Perrin chapter, the second to last one. This one had quite a bit of material, including Loyal and the few Aiel that came along on this journey. After successfully closing the Waygate, returning to Emond's Field, they make their way back. Gaul is apparently injured at some point here, and there's like some hints at some stuff that's going on between his character and Shiad. I hope that's how her name is pronounced. I'm just having all the issues now, and I think this is going to be a major theme for the rest of the series. I apologize. But there's, interesting stuff going on there. There's also more stuff with the Wolf Dream that I really appreciated, especially the fact that Perrin got to really confront Slayer in an actual direct manner. He actually injured Slayer, who in the real world is, confirmed to be Luke, which, wow, what a shocker. It's not like he was suspicious or anything this whole entire time. And it's not like, I know I commented about Luke being suspicious in at least one of the previous diaries. I want to say I probably did so in 2. I could be wrong about that. I just know I found him specifically to be a little bit strange for the entire time that this plot line has been in Two Rivers, or in the Two Rivers. Finally, there's one final thing, which is probably my least favorite part of this chapter, even though the rest of the chapter was pretty enjoyable. Perrin asks Zareen to appeal to Queen Morghese in, the very eastern part of what is this place? Is this Andor? I'm getting very different nations from different book series mixed up because of similar names. Andor, yes. So Queen Morghese of Andor, petitioning her to get some people over to the Two Rivers area, to help with the remainder of the Trollocs and Fades that have managed to get through the Waygate before it was able to be closed, because, Gaul and Loyal think that there's still many thousands of them left, while Luke, before he was essentially revealed to be Slayer, was only saying, oh, there can't be more than 1,000, all in his suspicious thing, probably trying to get people to keep their guard down so that he's probably a dark friend in some sense. That would be my guess. Like, that's got to be like the very base level of what Luke is. But that's kind of beside the point. Perrin asks Zareen to go appeal to Queen Morghese for support over here. I wasn't super hot on this particular moment, this particular scene, because Zareen basically says, I'll only do it if you marry me right now. And then there's, a little bit of back and forth, like sort of like quasi half bickering. It wasn't like the kind of bickering that occurred earlier in the book that I really hated, but it was still kind of stupid because she was like kind of rambling, and part of her grumblings were about how she and Perrin just get along so well, and she was like, well, because we clearly do. And it's like, no, you clearly don't. If you knew anything about relationships, stay away from each other. But that was the one major hiccup in the chapter, and I wasn't expecting them to go to this step, like marriage, this soon. I knew that they would get married just based off of like general osmosis from being around the series and people who read the series and everything, but I was not expecting it to happen in this book, and I definitely was not expecting it to happen like this abruptly and kind of out of nowhere and with no real reason. Like, it didn't feel earned, I'll say, so I wasn't super hot on that aspect of it. But otherwise, I believe I have two Tanchico chapters coming right up. Then the last Perrin chapter, and then the last couple chapters seem to be of the Rand, Matt, Egwene, the Aiel plotline, essentially. So only 5 more chapters left in the book. I'm almost done. I'm excited to see where these last couple plot lines end up. I'm excited to see what could be left here in Perrin's last chapter. That chapter is called Golden Eyes, though, so I have to assume that it has something to do with not just his, the wolf part of him, but also like his leader aspect, because of everybody in the Two Rivers calling him Perrin Golden Eyes. So I have to assume that there's something to do with that, which I've actually really enjoyed. Perrin's, inner turmoil about being this leader figure for everybody else and not wanting to be, and having like a sort of imposter syndrome kind of thing going on there. But yeah, so I'm excited to see what could be left for Perrin's plotline here. I'm really excited to see how the Tanchico plotline ends in this book, like what these last couple chapters have to give us. And then, of course, I'm nervously looking forward to the last couple Rand chapters, last couple chapters of the book, to see whether I find it to be a satisfying ending the way that I enjoyed The Dragon Reborn, or if it's going to be too similar to The Dragon Reborn's climax, or what's going on there, because frankly, I have no idea what's going to happen. So 5 chapters left. I'm very excited for that. But thank you guys for watching this video. I'll be back next Thursday for the final Wheel of Time diary of 2023 and the final Wheel of Time diary for The Shadow Rising, making 21 episodes, all done this year so far. Thank you guys for joining me for this journey. I really appreciate it. It does mean a lot to me. But thank you again for watching. I'll be back next week with the final one of these videos for this book. Thank goodness.